Hello. How's everyone? Okay, good. Welcome. My name is Dawn Prawl-George, and I have the honor and privilege of being the executive director of the Macula Vision Research Foundation. So I want to welcome everyone here on behalf of the foundation and get the program started for today. We believe very strongly in staying on time, starting on time, and ending on time, and giving you enough time to listen to the presentations and to ask questions. So let me go through a little bit of what's going to happen this afternoon. First of all, the way we structure our SupportSight seminars is that our hope is that you will walk out of this room today knowing one or two things that you didn't know when you walked in. Okay? That's our definition of success. We also organize these sessions in a way so that they're interactive. And it's really important to us because we know and understand that you're here because you have questions and you have your own personal situation, and this is an opportunity for you to get answers to your questions and to help you learn things and understand things better so that it helps your life improve the quality of your life. So that's the format of today. It's somewhat informal, and you'll have a lot of opportunity to interact with the presenters. I have the honor of introducing our first speaker. I like to call him Dr. Phil. Okay. Phil Rosenfeld is on our International Scientific Advisory Board. He's the only MD on that board, MD, PhD. And Dr. Phil is my go-to expert. I've learned so much from him. Many of you may recognize him. Some of you may be his patients. And Phil's here to set the stage to do a little AMD 101 and answer your questions and talk about not just the treatments on deck, but also the research and I guess whatever else, other questions you might have. So thank you, Dr. Phil. You want to hold it like this?
I think, good afternoon, everybody. Do we have another microphone to hand around to everybody? Good. So, welcome to PGA. As many of you know, I'm a professor of ophthalmology at the Bascom-Palmer Eye Institute, which is right down the road here. That's just one of our facilities. We're also mainly in Miami and Plantation and Naples. But it's an honor to be here today, and it's an honor to be affiliated with the Macular Vision Research Foundation. Herb Lotman had a vision, and it was a remarkable vision because what's special about this foundation is that it really funds research, and the Lotman family would actually pay for all the administrative costs of the foundation. And every single penny that was donated went for research. And NPR just did a series this week where they're investigating the Red Cross. Because Red Cross claimed, I don't know if you heard this, that 91% of their donations go to their in-the-field activities. And of course, that's false. And they were lying, and they were caught in this lie. But the Macular Vision Research Foundation, every penny that gets donated really does go for research. And when we're talking research, we're talking basic research and translational research. And there's a bunch of us that meet, PhDs, MD, and we go over these grant applications, which are by invitation only. So we reach out to the best of the best and young starting investigators with really interesting ideas. These are the kinds of people that don't get the kind of attention from the big funding agencies. And I'm proud to say we funded 4 grants recently, $100,000 a year for 3 years. And a couple of the applicants were really just getting started. And it's very exciting because this is where novel, important ideas are going to come from. So I've been affiliated with this organization, like I said, for about 5 years. And it's a remarkable effort. And I'd like to thank Dawn and the Lotman family because they make it possible. So I study macular degeneration. This is what I do. I started off as a general vitreoretinal specialist. I did retinal surgery. I saw all sorts of retinal diseases. But over the years, my research interests, my clinical interests really have focused in on macular degeneration, because when I started 19 years ago, there was a huge unmet need. Patients were going blind. I remember when I was training up in Boston at the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary, one of my professors, Johanna Seddon, was a geneticist. And I was trained as a molecular biologist, geneticist, and MD at Hopkins. And this was my area of interest. And I was going to study genetics of eye diseases. And she said, macular degeneration is a genetic disease. I thought, you're kidding me, but it comes on so late in life. She said, well, genetic diseases can come on at any time in life. This one in particular comes on later in life. And it really wasn't appreciated that it was a genetic disease because it came on so late in life. But slowly she collected families and parents and offspring. And there's a famous study she did of identical twins who participated in World War II. There's a national study going on, and she tapped into that for macular degeneration. And sure enough, identical twins always seem to get macular degeneration. So she pursued this, and she's really the person that got me interested in this disease. And when the Human Genome Project, many of you may have heard of it, there was the big NIH initiative to sequence the human genome. When the Human Genome Project was completed, I think it was 2004, the first human disease that was mapped and shown unambiguously to be a genetic disease was age-related macular degeneration. And to this day, it remains the strongest genetic association ever to come out of the Human Genome Project. And I'm not going to bore you with the details of the genetics, but it's not just one gene, it's a bunch of genes. But it turns out that most of the genes are in a particular pathway that control your immune system, how aggressively your immune system is activated. And it turns out, and it's more complicated than this, and I'm really simplifying, but it turns out that you can think of age-related macular degeneration almost like an autoimmune disease. It has waxing and waning course, but over a lifetime, your immune system is attacking the back of your eye. All right, so there's nothing that you did that caused this. This is the genetics. This is what you were born with for those of you that have it. And it's a slow process. It's a cumulative injury over a lifetime. But there's certain things you can do to help slow down the process. Or there's certain things you can do to accelerate the process. For example, if you're a smoker, there isn't a single disease in which smoking doesn't accelerate the disease process. But in fact, macular degeneration, it's been shown that if you're a smoker, the whole process is accelerated. But there's certain things you can do to slow it down. And all the things that are good for your heart and good for your brain are also good for your eyes. So, healthy diet, eat your green leafy vegetables, exercise on a regular basis, eat fish occasionally. So all the things that keep you healthy also are beneficial for your eyes and slow down the progression of macular degeneration. So because it's a genetic disease, by definition, it's in every cell in your body. So one of the important take-home messages that everyone has to understand is it's always in both eyes. It's always in both eyes. But people say, wait a second, I only have macular degeneration in one eye. I'm only getting injections in one eye. My other eye is fine. And my answer to them is, for now. Because the eyes don't progress at the same rate. I guarantee you, if you've got injections in one eye for macular degeneration, you may not need injections in the fellow eye, but the disease will progress. Because it starts off as what's called dry macular degeneration. That's what we call the early stages. And usually I can look into someone's eyes when they're in their 50s. And I can say, I'm suspicious. And I'm a prophet. I can predict what's going to happen 20, 30 years down the road. And that's what we're talking about. So if I see changes in someone in their 50s, I know once they're in their 70s, 80s, it's going to be a problem. And that's why it's important to stop smoking, eat a healthy diet, exercise, even once it's diagnosed, because it can slow the progression. So it starts as dry macular degeneration in both eyes, and it slowly progresses, and we identify things you may have heard us mention: drusen. These are these little yellow spots that we see in the back of the eye. Pigment clumps, these little pigmentary changes that occur in the back of the eye. And then in some people, in about 15 to 20% of people, the dry macular degeneration can turn into what's called wet macular degeneration. So dry is a slow degenerative process, and wet is when the abnormal blood vessels start growing and leaking in the back of the eye. Now, when I started 19 years ago, if you had wet macular degeneration, you were going to lose your central vision. There was even a chance you could lose all your vision. But most of the time, it was that center vision, the vision that allowed you to read and recognize people and drive your car and just function normally. You lost your central vision. In my early years of training, we used to treat these abnormal blood vessels with laser, hot laser. And we would target these blood vessels and we would destroy the blood vessels. Well, unfortunately, the blood vessels were located right where you wanted the vision to be, in the back of the eye. You can think of the eye like a camera. The back of the eye is the film in the camera, the retina, and the macula is the center of the retina. So we would treat that center of the retina with hot laser and destroy those blood vessels. At the same time, destroying, most of the time, we would destroy a person's vision. But we said, don't worry, in 5 years you'll thank me because your vision will be better off than it would have been. So I'm going to purposely make you blind in the hope that you'll be better off. All right? That didn't go over too well. Right? Not too many people said, okay, go ahead and do that. So what we ended up doing was just let the natural course happen, and slowly vision would be lost. Occasionally we'd get a save. We'd be able to treat with laser and the blood vessels would stop growing. But most of the time we would treat, and vision would be lost. And then there was a treatment that came along we were excited about in the late 90s called photodynamic therapy. We would inject a drug into an arm vein. This drug would circulate throughout the body in the blood vessels in the back of the eye. And then we would take this laser, this red light, what we called non-thermal, cold laser. We would shine it on the back of the eye. We would activate the drug. And it was better than treating with the hot laser. It still caused damage, but slowly would activate the drug and cause the blood vessels to regress. But most patients still lost vision, just not as much vision as they would have lost. And it wasn't the sudden vision loss that they would get with the hot laser. So that was a breakthrough. We called it a revolution at the time. There were a few remarkable saves, and it was a step forward. But then there was a discovery. There was a discovery by Harold Dvorak and Napoleon Ferreira. Harold Dvorak was at Deaconess Hospital in Boston. Napoleon Ferreira was at Genentech. And they both independently discovered this protein called VEGF, V-E-G-F, vascular endothelial growth factor. And it turns out that this protein was what the body produced that makes blood vessels grow. It makes blood vessels grow when you cut yourself and you have to heal the skin. It makes the blood vessels grow. When women ovulate, it makes the blood vessels grow in the ovary that surrounds the egg before it ovulates. In fact, that's where it was first discovered. And it's also the protein that cancers produce to grow blood vessels into the cancer. So a lot of people thought if we could block this VEGF, we could block cancers from growing because the blood vessels couldn't grow into the cancer, and we could cure cancer. Well, it turns out the drugs have been approved for cancer. They slow it down. They're certainly not curing the cancer. But it turns out the best use for drugs that block VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, is in the eye. And Genentech developed this drug called Avastin, which was their cancer drug, and they were also simultaneously developing another drug called Lucentis, which was a piece of the Avastin. And I'm credited with developing Avastin for macular degeneration due to generous patients who donated money to my research at Bascom Palmer Eye Institute. We actually ran a study where we gave Avastin systemically, intravenously, and we were able to stop the blood vessels from growing. And in my small study, all the patients saw better. It was remarkable. But then we figured out we could inject the same drug into the eye. Avastin could be injected into the eye. And for the low price of $10, we could treat macular degeneration. All right? That was a remarkable breakthrough. In July of 2005, we announced it. It spread throughout the world, and right now it's the most commonly used drug for the treatment of wet macular degeneration. But there are other drugs. And we were the lead investigators for the other Genentech drug, Lucentis, which is approved by the FDA. So Avastin is used off-label, and Lucentis is approved by the FDA to be injected into the eye. The price of Lucentis, $2,000. So there's a little bit of a difference in price, and all the studies so far have shown that the two drugs are the same. And I use both drugs because I talk to my patients, and some patients want the Avastin, the low-cost alternative, and some patients want the FDA-approved drug. And then there's a third drug that came out called Eylea, which is now commonly used, and I use it too, and we inject patients' eyes with that. The trouble with the injections, and for those of you getting the injections, you know, the problem with the injections, at least early on, it's not just one and done, it's just not two and done, but it's multiple injections that have to be given every month, usually for the first 3-4 months, then hopefully we can stretch it out to every month and a half, then 2 months, then 2.5 months, and 4 months. But some patients still require an injection every single month. Now, I didn't think patients would tolerate, back in the early 2000s, would patients accept the needle getting stuck in their eye every month for the first few months? I didn't think so. That's why we thought giving the drug intravenously was a better option. How about a pill? Wouldn't the pill even be better? Or eye drops? Sure, they would be better, and you'll hear about a pill in just a little bit. But right now, the best way to deliver the drug is by injecting it into the eye. But it's remarkable. Patients accept it. Patients accept it because it stops the blood vessels from growing and helps preserve vision. So now what we can do with these injections is we can convert the wet macular degeneration back to dry macular degeneration. Success, right? Problem solved. But it's not a cure. We're not curing the underlying disease. We're just stopping the wet macular degeneration. So what we're finding now, and I noticed this 5-6 years ago, and that's why I've switched all my research to really focusing on dry macular degeneration, because what we're appreciating now is that we seem to have solved the problem of that rapid, severe vision loss that patients were experiencing over a period of weeks and months, and we've switched it to a vision loss that now takes a few years. And all these patients that we treated 10, 12 years ago when we first started doing the clinical trials, they're all losing vision from the dry macular degeneration. So we didn't cure it, we delayed it. And what we're facing now is an epidemic of dry macular degeneration. And that's why there are a lot of drugs in clinical trials, and there are more drugs that need to be brought to clinical trials. And they're not things that we're using that aren't even drugs. Many of you may have heard about stem cells. And the idea is in dry macular degeneration, as you lose tissue, as those cells, as those photoreceptors, as the film in the back of the eye that's similar to the film in a camera, as that goes away, as that disappears, perhaps we can replace it by putting in these stem cells that can grow into all the different cells of the back of the eye and preserve and maybe someday restore vision. So we just published a paper in The Lancet. It was a multi-center trial. There were 5 sites. There was UCLA and Wills Eye and Harvard and South Carolina and Bascom-Palmer Eye Institute. And we showed for the first time that the treatment is safe. We can put these stem cells in the eye, and they don't develop into huge tumors, and then we have to remove the eye because there's a cancer in the eye. That was one of the concerns of the FDA and for all of us using these stem cells. But they're safe. They stay in the back of the eye. They seem to persist. And at least in this phase 1 safety trial, there were some patients that actually got to see a little bit better, but we're not trying to promote that right now. It could be a placebo effect, but there are certain things about the way they saw better that suggest that maybe it's more than just a placebo effect. So now we're moving forward to a phase 2 study, and we're several years away before we actually know that they work. So we have drugs being developed for dry macular degeneration, and I can go into more details if you want. We have stem cells, and there's still a great interest in coming up with better ways to treat the wet macular degeneration, so we don't have to keep injecting and injecting and injecting. So I think we've come a long way in 19 years since I've started. I'm proud of what we've accomplished, but we have a lot more that we need to do. So what I'd like to do is open this up to questions, or I can just continue talking. I got a lot to say. Yes.
Hi, Dr. Rosenfeld. It's a pleasure to see you again. I have to thank you for many things, but I don't want to go into that now. I'll do it later. The question now I have is, we're talking about the research being done and the clinical trials being prepared for the dry macula. The things that I'm asking, of course, none of the Genentech won't answer it, and none of the others will, because everything is a big secret, I understand. However, the thing that bothers me is that they're talking about the protein factor, they're talking about the cell structure factor with the stem cells, and they're also talking about the gene factor, changing of the genes or whatever. So if you could get into that a little, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So one of the hot areas of all of medicine is gene therapy. And to the best of my knowledge, no one is thinking about actually altering someone's genes to treat this disease. The role of gene therapy that's being studied at the current time, is the way to deliver drugs, protein drugs, into the back of the eye by taking a virus. Now, these aren't the kind of viruses like Ebola or influenza. These are viruses that are designed to carry genes inside them, but the viruses themselves are benign. They don't cause any disease. And what you do is you put the gene in the virus and you inject it into the eye, or you inject it under the retina. And there are two major strategies being pursued in age-related macular degeneration for the wet macular degeneration, that you can put one of the drugs that we currently use, similar to the drug that we use to block this VEGF, you can put it into this virus, put it into the eye. It then infects the cells in the back of your eye and allows your normal cells to produce this inhibitor, so you no longer have to get injections. Right? It's a wonderful concept. There's a lot of problems with thinking about doing that, and it's currently in clinical trials, and we're going to figure out if it's viable in terms of a treatment strategy. But there's a big company in California, a big company in the New England area, Genzyme, that's pursuing this. And there's a smaller company in California called Avalanche, which appears to have significant success doing this. So they're moving forward into phase 2 trials now, and we'll know if this is possible. But it's not really gene therapy. When I think of gene therapy, I think of a disease where you're actually going into the cell and you're changing the DNA, you're changing the gene. And that's being pursued for certain genetic diseases. But because macular degeneration affects your immune system, it's more complicated because you'd have to get it into all the immune cells all over your body, and it's just not practical. So gene therapy in the classic sense, correcting the genetic mistake, is not going to be possible in macular degeneration. But delivering drugs using the same strategy of gene therapy is practical.
Yeah. What on the stem cell research? On the stem cell research,
So
how do people volunteer for this? How do you get contact? Or?
So, of course, to get into a clinical study, you have to meet the inclusion or the entry requirements. And that's a very complicated process whereby all the different companies are making decisions about who they want to try treating and who they won't. And I'm not going to bore you on the types of macular degeneration that they want to treat, but all these decisions are made in collaboration with the Food and Drug Administration. So right now, most of the stem cell studies are looking at patients with just dry macular degeneration and a certain form of dry macular degeneration known as geographic atrophy or atrophy. So to know if you qualify, the best thing to do is see your doctor, and if your retina specialist doesn't know about the particular clinical study, they can contact me, or they can go on the internet and figure it out, or I'm happy to see you. But not everyone will qualify initially.
Will you have cards?
Yes, I can give you my card, and I'm happy to talk to you further about it. But one of the frustrations of all my patients is that everyone is very excited about stem cells and they want to get involved in the clinical research, but not everyone qualifies right now. That doesn't mean they won't qualify in the future, but right now the studies are being very selective in who can get in.
All right, I know from other drugs that I follow, they take the worst of the lot, because that'll show the biggest improvement.
Well, in the phase 1 study, the safety study, we took the worst of the worst. I mean, these patients deserve a lot of credit because they underwent surgery and implantation of these stem cells, and we never anticipated they would get any benefit at all. But you have to start with people that have really bad vision, because if it isn't safe, you wouldn't want to put the treatment into someone with good vision, or at least moderate vision. So initially, the people that get it always have bad vision. And slowly, with each clinical trial, we improve, the type of patient that gets into the trial with better and better vision.
Well, most of us that have dry macular degeneration are older, so if you put it off for a number of years, they won't need it no more.
Well, the idea, number one, is always to get the treatment in before the person passes away so they can benefit. That's the number one rule. Number two, I can't predict. Patients ask me, am I going to go blind? When am I going to lose my vision? And my answer to them is, well, when are you going to die? Okay? If you're going to live another 30 years and you're 80 and you got macular degeneration, you're going to lose your vision unless we come up with something. But if you're in your 70s and 80s, and it depends on the stage of macular degeneration, it really depends how many more years you have. I can't tell you, I can't predict, I can't look into a crystal ball and tell you how much vision you're going to have in 10, 15, 20 years. But we're going to do our best to come up with treatments as soon as possible. Next question.
But are they all necessarily, what's the word that you just used?
They're all macular degenerations because they affect the macula.
But I mean,
And the macula is the center part of the retina.
but cannot they be also environmentally caused? Let's say intense light or intense heat?
Good question. So, most of what I'm talking about are the macular degenerations that have a genetic origin. Interestingly, there are macular degenerations that can be caused by drugs that people take. For instance, after breast cancer, a lot of women are on tamoxifen. What we're finding now is tamoxifen can cause a macular degeneration-like presentation. So you can have drug-induced macular degeneration. There's another drug called Plaquenil, which is given for lupus. Plaquenil can cause a macular degeneration. And then there are environmental causes. If you're a sun gazer, if you like to look into the sun, when LSD was a common recreational drug, LSD induced solar, sun-related maculopathy. It was very common because people would stare up into the sun. There's certain religions in which people stare up into the sun. So continuous light injury can cause a macular degeneration. But sunlight, and this is very important because I get this question a lot. Sunlight, normal sunlight exposure does not cause, and to the best of our knowledge, does not aggravate macular degeneration. Okay? It's not the result of sunlight exposure. There have been a number of excellent studies now that have confirmed this. And this gets me to the other point, and that is a lot of people ask me the question whether cataract surgery is safe in macular degeneration. And the answer is yes. Cataract surgery is completely safe. There was a misconception for many years that cataract surgery could aggravate macular degeneration, but that's not the case. Cataract surgery is safe. All right?
Time for one more.
Very interesting. Any more questions?
I had heard that you are doing research on central serous retinopathy, which you diagnosed me with. Is there anything happening in that field?
So central serous retinopathy, which was actually what Karen Lotman had, which was Karen married to Herb Lotman, one of the founders of the Macular Vision Research Foundation. She has chronic recurrent central serous retinopathy. And that's a maculopathy that affects the macula, but it's a different disease. And there's been some recent work done by Francine Bahar-Cohen in Paris suggesting that the cause of that disease appears to be, I don't know if you'll know what aldosterone is, but aldosterone is a normally secreted hormone from your kidneys. And it turns out that the aldosterone receptor in the back of your eye, it's a protein that your body produces, is abnormal. And there's some drugs normally used to control high blood pressure. There are drugs now that are showing some efficacy in treating this disease early on. But we really don't understand why it happens in a lot of people. It's a real mystery, and it's a very common condition. And if you read the textbooks 30, 40 years ago, the common patient with central serous retinopathy, which is a leakage in the back of the eye, not caused by blood vessels, just an oozing of fluid. It was a 30-year-old white businessman, type A personality, obsessive compulsive, right? And now, 30 years later, we see it in every ethnic group. We see it in people in their 30s, their 20s, their 50s, their 80s. We see it across different age groups. And the one common denominator appears to be that it's stress-related. So this is a modern disease that's come on as stresses in our lives have increased and increased. And we really don't know what causes it. But it's becoming more common.
Did you want to comment about the latest news on the HIV?
Oh, okay. So there's been some news recently that it might be the case. I don't want to say yes because it's theoretical right now, but it might be the case that some of the drugs that are used currently for AIDS, HIV, could be repurposed in the treatment of dry macular degeneration. And one of my colleagues, Jay Embody at the University of Kentucky, now is moving forward on a clinical trial. He has pretty good rationale for thinking that it might be beneficial. So one way to come up with a novel therapy is to develop a drug from scratch, which takes a lot of time and it's very expensive, or you can repurpose a drug that's already out there for another disease and it's already FDA approved and you just use it off-label. So we hope that he might be right. We don't know, but we'll find out from the clinical studies.
I'm sorry, I do have one last question. There is a theory, which is gaining momentum, I think, that there are cells adjacent to the macula, which are still alive and healthy, and light can be focused on that. Is there more research being done in that area?
Yeah, so the question is it possible to take the light that's coming towards your center of your vision and refocus that light away from the center of the vision? Right? Is that beneficial? So as patients lose their center vision, on their own, they learn to use that healthy retina that's off to one side. And this is a learning process. Certain people are better at it than other people. But it's really quite remarkable if you practice it and you try it, how well you can see by sort of moving your eye a little bit off center. So there have been optical devices that have been developed that have tried to do this for the patient. And I'm really unaware of any optical device that has really succeeded.
How about prisms?
So prisms work if you have double vision. They tried using prism-type devices to redirect the light. And it's very disconcerting for a lot of people because they're looking straight ahead, but the light's going to a different part of the retina, so they think it's coming from a different direction. And you really have to train yourself to understand that the light's actually coming straight ahead, even though you perceive it as going off to the side. And it's better done by people learning how to move their eyes on their own so that they can function better using their eyes and understanding that the light's coming straight ahead, but they're looking off to the side. It's an educational process, and that's why low vision educators are so important. We'll do one more?
We'll do it at the end. We'll come back to yours, okay? We'll come back to your question. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Phil. How about that? Great stuff, huh? All right, wonderful. Also, I didn't spend the time to formally introduce Dr. Rosenfeld because I wanted to point out to all of you, in your packets at your seat, in the red folders, is our SupportSight newsletter. Some of you may already be receiving this, and certainly after today you will be getting it. It comes out 3 times a year, and Dr. Rosenfeld always has a column in the newsletter, every issue, and it's called Fact or Fiction. And there's his picture and all of his pedigree and all the information you need to know. When people call us, they tell us this is one of their favorite columns and things to read, and they always find it incredibly informative. And after you've heard, Dr. Rosenfeld speak just now, you can understand why. So we're very thankful to him for doing that for us as well. Okay, next on the agenda, I'm happy to introduce Terry Swift. She's with us today. Terry is the Vice President of Business Development at Discovery Vision. And Terry actually is also co-founder. Vision is an ophthalmology-focused subsidiary of Tyrogenix. Terry will tell you a little bit more about that. A clinical stage company developing novel therapies for cancer and ophthalmic diseases. So Terry not only has been in the biotech industry for most of her career, her successful career, and focusing on marketing and business development. But she also is an equestrian. And one little thing you might not know about her. And so she was competed in the Munich Olympics. So without further ado, Terry, I'd like you to come up front. She's going to talk to us about an exciting new project, stage 2 project at Discovery Vision.
Dawn, thank you. And it's an honor to be here, and thank you all for coming. And we're here to talk about our company, Discovery Vision. We're based in Florida, and we're developing a new novel therapy for macular degeneration in the form of a pill. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the journey, and we're going to get some slides up here. Okay, do I need the... There? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so as I said, we're based in West Palm Beach. We're developing a drug. We started out as a cancer company, but I'll get into our story and how we got there and where we're going. And one of the things I have to say about the Macular Vision Research Foundation is the importance of foundations who find academics and find where the science is, and then they also come to people like ourselves who are in the clinical trial area, and we need to find patients and we need to get the word out, and these things don't happen easily, and the fact that you're here to hear more about it is how things happen and how things get moving. Okay, so certainly Dr. Phil told us a lot about wet AMD. Right there, the red spot right there, that's where that blood has leaked in the macula. That the cause and effect, as we said, there's a very large genetic component. And there's also some believe that, sunlight, diet, all of the things contribute in various ways. AMD, the prevalence is growing. This is going to be a worldwide problem, and I don't think there's enough retina specialists coming out of school to be able to give all of these injections. As you can see, the United States is going to increase by 97%, but then we have China, 140%, 146%, all by the year 2035. This is a growing global issue. Right now, the current treatment, injections, it's more than just the injections. They work, they maintain the vision, and that's important. That's a huge breakthrough. But as we all know, it involves other people bringing you there. It involves the trepidation. It's not easy for anybody, and it's a grueling process because, as Phil mentioned, it continues. It's never over. So, Discovery Vision, we started out as an oncology company in 2007, and the idea was to decrease toxicity and side effects in our cancer drug. We've gone for known targets, and we're still going along strong. We're going into phase 2 with our cancer drug as well, attacking solid tumors. And again, it's what Phil was saying. It's certain targets, and it's this VEGF PDGF, and it's a similar thing that's happening in macular degeneration. So none of these things just come out of the air. You think you're in one business, you think you're in the oncology business, and when you're a small biotech startup, serendipity plays a huge part. We're only 9 people now. We're basically a virtual company, but we have clinical trials going on all over the world, which I'll tell you more about. We got into the ophthalmology. Our CEO, Sherry Snyder, was at a talk, similar, it was mostly VCs, and we were talking about our cancer drug and how we were moving forward, and we were approached by some fellows who were actually in the ophthalmology business and said, you all should try this. You should take a look into ophthalmology. We think your drug and the target you're going after could really help patients with macular degeneration. So he thought that was an interesting idea, but as I said, we're 9 or 10 people, and who's got the time when you're already curing cancer, supposedly? So my mother, she also had macular degeneration, and it became kind of a passion for me. She had a great life until she hit about 78, and then she was diagnosed with AMD, and this was back in the laser days, and when, they just burned and nothing really worked. And I lived the devastation that disease caused, and, you can't drive, you can't read like you used to, movies. Even, she didn't like going out that much. She said, I can't see my food, and it's just, I don't know what I'm eating, and everything's kind of a shock. But it got the passion going, and that's what biotechs and startups, and that's what drives us forward with what we're doing. And so even though we're a small company, we thought, let's give this a go. Let's see if it will work. A little bit about the team so that you know how all the pieces came together. Our CEO is Sherry Snyder. He's sitting in the back, and he started 14 successful biotech companies. Genzyme, which Phil mentioned, was one of them, and that was started basically with 2 people, Sherry and another scientist. So these things grow and happen, and the hope of that. Sherry was giving a talk down at the Breakers in 2007, and we were giving a talk about science and just what the Macular Vision Research Foundation, we had all of the new script scientists. They had just moved here. They were very eager to hear from an entrepreneur on what you do with your science, but a lot of times the academics don't quite get the science, the utility out of it and into a business. And we always like to start our talks with validated science comes really in the form of an invoice. So we were approached by a scientist, Dr. Chris Liang, who was he's a developer of Sutent, which is Pfizer's leading kidney cancer drug. And he developed it, so he's been studying this molecule for 15 years. And he came to us and he said, I think I can make this a better drug, take out the toxicity, but I don't want to work for a big pharma. And that's how our company started. A little bit about me. I'm basically a marketing, business development person. My background qualifies me nothing for biotechnology. I went to Parsons School of Design. But when we were putting our pieces together, the key ingredient was finding Dennis O'Shaughnessy, who happened to also live in New Jersey but have a place down in Florida. And he approached us, and he knows ophthalmology. He knows how to design the trials, how to get us through the waters of the FDA. And without his help in forming the other experts, That is sort of the next ingredient that we needed to form this company, Discovery Vision. We put together a scientific advisory board with Dr. Rosenfeld, Jason Slachter for the Reading Center, Glenn Stoller, an ophthalmologist, and Jeff Heyer up in Boston. These are the people you need to give you the direction to get through a clinical trial. It's even when you're first going into it, your IND, it's over 1,000 pages long. It is a complicated process. The FDA does not make anything simple. So here's what our drug is. We call it X82 right now, and it's derived from Sutent, the kidney cancer drug. It blocks both VEGF and PDGF, which I'll talk a little bit about. And so the whole approach was to take out the toxicity and to make it a safer drug. So the VEGF, and that's what Lucentis, Avastin, and Eylea are all about. And that's what's causing the lack of oxygen, the growth factors in the back of the eye, and that's where the blood leaks. So the fact of these drugs, what they're doing is they're maintaining vision. So you don't get further loss. They're maintaining. As we know, the blood is already leaked. PDGF is being attacked now with a new drug called Favista. It's another injection, but they've noticed, and the interesting part is it's improving vision. So that's what's very exciting. So we follow their data a lot. They have a huge phase 3 trial going on. But yet, right now, it's a second injection. We are unique because we have both VEGF and PDGF in the form of a pill. And that's what makes our story exciting. We started off saying, oh, maybe we should just inject this. But then we figured we'd just be another injecting, hoping to extend the treatment. And it was like when you're a little company and you have brave people like Sherry Snyder advising you, you swing for the fences. And so we're hoping the pill can move through this. So as we got our information on our cancer drug, and we decided, I did it just like anybody else would do. I got on the web and I looked up who were the best retina specialists, and lo and behold, you get to Bascom Palmer, and Dr. Liang and I sent an email to Dr. Rosenfeld, and we didn't hear back at first. So our scientist, who's kind of shy, he said, I don't think he's interested. And I said, no, I think he just didn't read it. And so we followed up, and we sent another one, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And Dr. Rosenfeld invited us to come down to Bascom Palmer, which we did. We saw how packed his office is. It's pretty amazing. And there happened to be a researcher who had just moved to Bascom Palmer who needed a project. So what his trial was is these are the results, and it's showing, could our drug get to the back of the eye through an oral dosage instead of an injection? So this was given to rats, and this trial showing you have the untreated before and the untreated with no drug, and then the last two boxes are our drug. They're showing two different doses, but they got to the back of the eye. This one trial is what put us into the ophthalmology business. We gave it a go, we pulled the trigger, and off. The rest is history as far as down the path. So why a pill? Obviously, injections are not any fun for anybody, but the saving of the second eye, and if we can also extend the treatment time, and the third step is if we can also improve vision. We've just completed our phase 1. We're wrapping up. We had 35 patients. The majority maintained their vision with very few injections. And 80% who completed the whole trial was 6 months, by the way. 80% had no injections while on study. And the OCTs, which, as Dr. Phil says, they like pictures, are significantly reduced in 7 out of 10 patients on the highest dose. And 66 of the patients had vision improvement. Now that's important because, as you said, as somebody mentioned, in a phase 1, you get people who've had 40 injections, at least. There was no expectation, and to see the vision improvement was something really exciting. But what really got us, our advisory board, excited is when we finally, in our dosing, found the right dose, and we got back an OCT that looked like this. That's the baseline with the bump. That's bad. And then after 1 month on our drug, the visual acuity, the thickness had flattened out. And that's a big measurement. And that was the aha moment. So that's what we're very excited about. Phase 2, we have grown. We're going to have 20 sites. We're going to have 133 patients, randomized, double-masked, placebo-controlled study. And they will be previously treated patients that demonstrate the ability to achieve a dry macula using Eylea for up to 3 months, I think. The end point is going to be fewer injections. We're trying to hopefully reduce the injections that a patient has had by 50%, hopefully more. We're planning to start in February, and we hope to be able to, we can eliminate injections for some people, but that's the hope. So, as I said, it takes teamwork, it takes the competition. We're following the other drug, the second injection. We're in the thick of it, and we're very excited, and I'm glad you all came here today to hear about what we're doing. Thank you. Oh, one other quick thing. We did this talk in Naples the other day, and I sat next to a woman at lunch, and her husband has AMD, and she looked at me and she said, "I really want to thank you for what you're doing." She said, "I used to pray for world peace, and now I'm praying for no more injections."
Thank you, Terry. Exciting, right? It's brand new stuff. So we're working in partnership with Discovery Vision to help spread the word and market the opportunity for the clinical trial. So if any of you are interested, I think we registered everyone. Please let us know at the end of this, and we will make sure that Terry and her team get your information. So we will collect those names and pass them on to Discovery Vision. So this is exciting, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Don.
All right. Okay. Our next presenter, and this is the last presentation of today, is a person I call my VBFF, my very best friend forever. And the reason he's my very best friend forever is because I believe he's probably one of the most incredible people I've ever met. And he's changed my life, and that's only happened recently. His name is Charlie Collins. And Charlie is an international inspirational speaker. He travels all over the country and around the world to tell his story about his journey. Here comes Charlie now. The one thing you probably don't know about Charlie is that Charlie can't see. Charlie was diagnosed with juvenile macular degeneration, or as Dr. Phil referred to it earlier, Stargardt's disease. And Charlie is here to share his story and just hopefully make your day a little better. So thank you, Charlie. Here you go.
Hello. Hi, in this short time, I am going to share a bit about my journey with macular degeneration, how to build your environment successfully to live better with macular degeneration or any type of low vision. Then we're going to do a raffle, but you got to be here. You got to be here at the end of the presentation. You could win an electronic video magnifier valued at $300, and you're also going to have an opportunity to win a copy of my book. So those who got up and left, lose out. Okay, so how many people in this room, besides myself, have a form of macular degeneration? Please raise your hand. Okay, good, I'm not alone. Did you know the number one thing that limits a blind person is their vision? The number one thing that limits a sighted person is their vision also. See, we don't see with our eyes. We don't do any seeing with the eyeball. We do all our vision with our brain. We don't see with our eyes, we see with our brains. And with us, we had better eyesight for a while, but it slowly got worse, so the quantity and the quality coming in got less. So we focused, see, we live in a sighted, very dominant visual world. And I had to adapt years ago to shift that, because vision works just fine. I have many blind from birth friends who have very good vision. They see just fine. I had an employee of mine who was blind since birth, and I pretended to have a pill that if she took it, it would have restored her eyesight to 20/20. And she told me I could keep that pill. I wouldn't change anything about who I am and my blindness. I have a perfectly clear world I live in. It was a big lesson for me, because being low vision, I know what I'm missing. But that's okay. I'm not missing anything. After being in and out of doctor's offices for 2 years, my parents and I, along with my 4 sisters and my brother, were finally sat down. And we were told the devastating news, just like anyone in here who got it. I'm sorry, 4 out of 6 of your kids have a disease called Juvenile Macular Degeneration. As Dr. Phil said, there's different forms. I was the lucky one to get it as a kid. And that doctor then said, there's nothing I can do, after he put us through 3 years of grueling testing. There's nothing we can do. There's no pair of eyeglasses, and there's no pill to fix it. Have a nice life. And by the way, no more snow skiing. Don't play sports in school. He gave my mom a whole list of things that we couldn't do anymore. And I'll tell you, the minute that door closed behind her, she crumpled that paper up and threw it in the garbage can. Because as you'll find out, if you focus on what you can't do, guess what? You can't do it. At age 13, I received a certificate of blindness from the state of Connecticut. I got a nice big piece of mail. I was all excited. And when I opened it, it was a big certificate, like I'm going to hang it on the wall. It says, you are now declared legally blind. Great. But I got a free fishing license. And here it would come in handy, I bet. I don't know, do you get one in Florida? Free fishing license and a driver would be nice. But that isn't what anybody at 13, 80, any age wants to get, is a certificate of blindness or the news that you have macular degeneration. See, a lot of the cause of suffering out there right now is ignorance. These doctors, these people out there don't tell you what the next step of your journey is, because they don't even know. They're too busy. So I wasn't told that for many years, 4 out of 6. Age 9, diagnosed. By age 13, legally blind. By age 19, want to commit suicide. I was so full of fear, self-hatred, anger, and denial, and I didn't want to be me anymore. How do you go through life when you can't drive? When you can't see the people in front of you? When you can't read off the chalkboard? When you're never going to be able to run your own business or work for somebody successfully? How do you go through life like that? Nobody was teaching me, talking about that. Maybe they did a little, but I didn't hear them. So you can't hear something until you're willing and ready. So what happened? Checking the time. Well, I rode a motorcycle. Yeah, I know. I rode a motorcycle. I rode a dirt bike. And I rode it in the woods, and I raced around like a maniac. But I also worked as a landscaper, right? And I went up to this motorcycle dealership where I would cut the grass, and he would give me some oil and things for the motorcycle. And one day, this long-bearded, ZZ Top-looking dude, big motorcycle, gruffy guy, loved him. I wanted to be him, not me. He asked me if I wanted to work there. And you know what my first thought was? Why would he ask a dumb, blind guy if he wants to work here? And my other thought was, how did he know? I would love to work here, but I can't. I can't see. I can't read. I can't do a lot of things. I hadn't read. I was 23 since I left high school, and I'm the guy that made that top half of the class possible. I barely got out of high school, and I stopped reading. I didn't read much in high school. I had shut down. Do you know what happens to the brain when you don't use it? It goes into atrophy. If you ever break a bone or something, it takes a while to get that muscle back. Guess what happens when you can't? Your brain starts shutting down. Then other things start to happen in your life, and depression sets in. I don't want that to happen to anybody in here. I'm not saying it is, just sharing my personal experience, what atrophy of the brain feels like. It feels like there isn't enough alcohol out there to make it come back to life. I can tell you that from personal experience. I told Jim I'd have to think about that, the motorcycle dude, and I went home, and I have a mother that encouraged me and told me, you can do it, Charlie, come on. But I kept thinking, I can't. So I went in there, and I sat across the table from Jim, and he told me he was going to give me a 90-day test period. I thought, well, if I make it 80, I'll be lucky. Okay, Jim, I'll take it. But you got to know one thing. I'm legally blind, and I can't see that well. I wanted to say, why the heck are you giving me a job? But he said, I knew that about you, but that's not why I'm hiring you. I'm hiring you because you're good with motorcycles, you have a passion for the stuff in this business, and I believe in you. Wow, somebody believed in me? I didn't. That little nugget of hope that he just instilled in me, years of suffering started falling from me. I surrendered, I think, in that moment. I was powerless over macular degeneration. This little stupid thing on the back of my eye made my whole life miserable. And it had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with my thinking. I focused on what I can't. I thought about what I couldn't do. Poor me. This is not fair. How come I had to get macular degeneration? Why did I have to get it at such a young age? I'm mad at God. I'm mad at my parents. I'm a blamer. I'm a complainer. And I'm a shamer. And I rationalized and justified all the stupid stuff I did because if you were me, you would do it too. So suck it up, I would tell people. It is not just a disease in the eye. It's a mental, spiritual, physical illness that needs quality people helping quality people get better. Well, I got my first Optelect video magnifier at my motorcycle job. Okay? A desktop reader that I could read magazines and things and pieces of paper and invoices. I could actually sell something. I designed all new signs around the store in large print. I got Zoom text for my computer, and I got a pocket magnifier and proper lighting. You know what happened? In a year and a half, I became $1 million salesman. In 3 short years from the day I walked in that motorcycle business, I became the vice president and part owner of a multi-million-dollar corporation. The legally blind guy that wanted to kill himself is now sitting on top of the world. All because I made a decision, I had some willingness, I surrendered to macular degeneration, and I took daily action. All things I want people to do. So I worked. I have, after the motorcycle business, I decided it was time. You could read my book too. You'll really learn about me. But I decided it was time to move on and get into, you can't keep something unless you give it away. Well, my newfound happiness and freedom from this macular degeneration, I sold a lot of motorcycles, snowmobiles, jet skis, boats, outboard motors, all sorts of great things over my time. But I wasn't doing much for people except selling them something they really couldn't afford. So I got into this business of helping people with low vision, with any type of eyesight that was stopping them from remaining independent, from being able to read their mail, manage their finances. That was cool. Manage their finances and remain content, have some peace of mind, stay connected to family. I wanted to teach people how they too could live well with low vision. So I opened a business 18 years ago. It's going strong. At one time, there were 5 of us in there with vision impairment. 2 were completely blind, and the other 3 were low vision like me. And we were truly the blind leading the blind. And we've helped thousands and thousands of people over the past 18 years regain their independence. See, what my slogan is, we restore vision for people with vision loss. In one visit, guaranteed. I believe that no matter what type of vision impairment you may have, and the frustrations you're facing on a daily basis, there is hope and a solution for you. I know that. All it takes, see, what I learned was, it wasn't that I couldn't, it was that I wouldn't. So I hear a lot of people say, I can't read, and then all of a sudden they're reading. Huh. Interesting. I can read, yes. How can I do this? What should I do about this? How can I improve the lighting in my house? I told you I was going to talk quick about environmental. So what I meant by that is your environment. I go through the day and I don't even think about having low vision. Why? Because I'm positive. I align myself with products and people that help support me go through my day. Most days doesn't even enter my mind that I have a vision impairment. And I travel the country alone. I go on airplanes, hotels. I'm the chief marketing officer for Optelec United States. I own a business in Connecticut, and I recently just started another business. And I have a 14 and 16-year-old daughters. That right there keeps you busy. How do I do all that, people ask me. One day at a time. So before we go to the raffle, you guys want to do the raffle, right? You guys all with me still? Okay. Is this making sense to you? Phew. Want to make sure I didn't hear any heads hit the table. That's good. All right. Well, I wanted to just let you know that each day Charlie Collins does wake up in the morning actually happy. I wake up happy and full of life and the level of I want to go serve. But behind all that is I wake up legally blind, but I'm a legally blind man with clear vision. We don't see with our eyes. We see with our brains and our ears and our hands. And when we eat, we see. And Gene in the back, who has by all those machines, Gene and I are here to help show you some of those other types of tools that will help you. And as a quick side note, doctors have gotten much better over the years. They are starting to share the right information with people to help them, because the big journey is what comes after the doctor. How can I live today successfully? And those of you who are butt is in a chair right now, you're in the game. And I appreciate that. Thank you.